Hello and welcome back to Round the Table, slow TV radio from the meeting point, broadcasting not only to Bilbao but throughout the world. And in this week's programme we'll be discussing art and creativity, which of course is the topic left over from the end of the last trimester. So this was what we were discussing at the end of June, which I didn't make a podcast out of. But before we discuss art and creativity, we have some news for you. And of course, the new book for the next trimester is going to the printers as we speak. And I thought I'd tell you a bit about the book for this trimester and also the topics that we'll be covering in the podcasts from now until Christmas. So the first unit in the book is a topic called On Tour. Somebody last trimester suggested that the word tour would make an interesting topic. And I worked with that, and so we'll be discussing going on tour, touring around countries. Travelling is related to travelling, so we'll be talking a lot about holidays and things like that, and why tourists don't tour like they're supposed to. A lot of tourists stay in one place. Things like that. But mostly we'll probably be talking about what happened during the summer. So that will be the podcast which should be going out on the 4th of October. On the 11th of October, we'll be discussing advice. That's the second week in the trimester, the topic of advice. Who we get advice from, what type of advice we like to look for, if some people give too much advice, all that kind of thing. And we've got some very interesting texts for those of you that are coming to class in the reading sections in the book for your voluntary homework, if you choose to decide, if you choose to do any homework, which of course is not obligatory. There are interesting reading things to do in the book, all about advice. So that's going out on the 11th. The 18th of October, we'll be discussing the topic of success and failure. Again, for those of you with the book, there are some great texts for you to look at, full of information that you might want to use and apply to the discussion in the group. But for those of you that only listen to the podcast, that's what we'll be talking about on the 18th. On the 25th of October, we'll be having a podcast on the topic of utopia, making a perfect society, something we've discussed many times at the meeting point, but each time it comes back, we have a slightly different way of looking at the idea. So utopia for the 25th of October. The next topic will be history. The importance of history and why we need to preserve our history, or if it just causes problems and maybe we should just forget our history. That will be going out on the 1st of November. The next unit is called Scams and Cheats and Cons, and we'll be looking at various ways that people can be cheated. The discussion for that week will be broadcast on the 8th of November. The 15th of November, we've got positivity and negativity, how we remain positive in this very negative world that we live in at the moment. 22nd of November, the topic will be rage, why people get so angry in the modern society, and if we just need to calm down a little. Similar one on the 29th is the topic of speed. We've discussed the topic of slow down in the past, so this might cover similar territory. So the topic will be speed, how fast the modern society is, and if we expect things to be done too quickly, and sometimes it's good to focus on long-term projects. On the 6th of December, we've got a big topic of waste. We'll try not to get too depressed on the topic of waste and the environment. Technology is on the 13th of December. which of course is about technology and our relationship with technology and how it changes our lives and society. And then a bit different, for the 20th of December, the final one of the trimester, we'll be discussing myth and mystery. Things like the Bermuda Triangle and Loch Ness monsters and the little people that live in the forests and all that kind of stuff, and where these myths and legends come from, and if there might be any truth in any of these things. So those are the topics we have coming up for this trimester, and now let's continue with the programme, and we have a monologue on the topic of art and creativity.
All children draw, and all children draw the same. Then something happens. They stop drawing. They stop because they become aware of the fact that they are not as good as other people. This is why so many people believe that they draw like an 8-year-old child. It's because they stopped when they were an 8-year-old child. Some continued and improved with time. Time is the key to developing talent. Of course, not everybody is born with the same abilities. Some show a natural aptitude, whether it be for art, music, sport, or languages. And as we tend to enjoy success rather than failure, we then dedicate more time to those activities which we are good at, and develop our ability to a higher level. Nobody is born a great pianist or painter. The seed of an ability is nurtured through many hours of dedicated practice. Given enough time, those drawing or musical skills become so ingrained into us that it becomes second nature. The talent seems to take on a life of its own. It just seems to pour out. It all looks so easy. But the illusion is the result of many hours of repetition and hard work. The curse of comparison. I like painting watercolors, but I'm not very good. I play the guitar, but I'm not very good. Few people are able to talk about their talents without adding a little caveat at the end, a little apology for our disappointment at seeing their humble efforts. In this modern society, we have access to all of the best that the world can offer. We can listen to the greatest pianists and admire the work of the greatest sculptors of antiquity. So our triflings may seem poor by comparison. Remember, perfection is the enemy of the good. We should stop making this kind of comparison and be more content with our artistic contribution, no matter how small it might be, as without it the world would be a duller place.
So this week we've got 4 quotes for you on the topic of art and creativity. The first one, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Every artist was first an amateur." I suppose what he means is that when you begin a hobby like art or music, we can stretch this out into learning languages, learning to play pianos, all kinds of things like that. To begin with, you're not necessarily very good at it, but you become better. But I'm going to take issue with Ralph Emerson here and say the word amateur, if you look at the etymology of the word amateur, it actually means you do it for love. That ama bit at the beginning is related to amor. So you should always be an amateur, really. If you're not really loving what you're doing, you should stop doing it, especially where art and music is concerned. The second one from Maya Angelou is you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. This is the wonderful thing about creativity. You keep exercising it, it gets better and better. There's no end to creativity. By its very nature, it is creating things, it is making more from nothing. Thomas Merton said, "Art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time." Sometimes you can lose yourself when you get absorbed into the practice of doing something, especially if you're painting pictures. And I know people that use art as a type of therapy. If you do painting by numbers, apparently, you get one of these pictures where the lines all drawn out and you have a collection of paints and each one has a number on the top for different colours, and you paint in the shapes according to the number. Apparently it's very, very therapeutic. It's a form of meditation for some people. Art and creativity, knitting and things like that I've heard are very therapeutic as well. And finally from Neil Gaiman, the world always seems brighter when you've just made something that wasn't there before. Yes, this is very, very true. You create something from nothing. You start with a blank canvas and you create, well, it doesn't have to be a masterpiece, but you create something. It wasn't there before. You make something from nothing. And apparently creating things lowers stress hormones and is good for your health. This is what doctors say. They've studied the hormones and the stress levels in your brain. And whatever you're doing, painting, woodworking, I recommend making things out of wood. It's very, very good for you. So those are our 4 quotes for this week's topic of art and creativity. I think you'll have to agree that this is quite an interesting artifact. This thing here that you can see is called the Makapansgat pebble. It's a small stone about 8 centimeters tall, and it was found in a cave in South Africa, and it looks a bit like a human face. I think you'll agree. Now, this is not a man-made thing. This is a naturally occurring pebble. One of our ancient ancestors, called the Australopithecans, who lived in South Africa, this was about 2.8 million years ago, they dated this pebble. One of these ancient hominids found this thing on the floor and transported it over several kilometers, because this type of stone isn't naturally occurring in the location that it was found. So they know that somebody, if I can call this ancestor a somebody, picked up a stone and went, "Oh wow, look at this. Haha, this looks like a face." Well, of course they didn't say anything because they couldn't speak in those days. There was no verbal communication in those days. But somebody picked it up and thought, "Wow, look at that. That's strange. That looks like a person." And they carried it all the way back to the cave to show, I suppose, to show some other Australopithecine ancestors. And they all stood around looking at it, wondering how that might have happened. But the thing is, it's the earliest known occurrence of a hominid recognizing symbolism, that they could pick up something and say, that looks like something. So this predates any idea of, well, like I say, before language, because apparently you need symbolism to create language. And we're talking millions of years before people started painting on cave walls. All of those wonderful buffaloes and horses and things like that, they were only about 40,000 years old or something like that, the oldest ones of those. So there you go. This small stone that looks like a human face, and somebody a long time ago found it on the floor and went, look at that. That, I think, is quite interesting. Well, that's it for this week. Just a short one this week with no typical mistakes or pronunciation errors. Not even an interesting word, but you did have an interesting artifact. Really, this one was just to let you know what's coming up over the next trimester. Of course, the trimester begins the week of the 29th of September, so the next podcast should be going out on Saturday the 4th or maybe the 5th. So look forward to seeing you all back in class next week or the week after. And if not, if you're just a listener, don't forget to tune in on the 4th, where we'll be discussing the topic of going on tour. So have a good week. Till next time.